Well, good evening, everyone.
Welcome to Walking in
Lady.
Welcome to Walking in Spirit and Truth. We're so glad that you've joined us. And we're not going to do a lot of introduction and stuff tonight because we don't have a lot of time. We have 25 minutes. So we got to hurry through this thing. But we are so glad that you've joined us. And if you don't know who we are, we're John and Sandi Craig. We have a congregation in Amarillo, Texas. And we do several things we do several things, and that includes we have a Sukkot and things like that, which we'll talk about some other time. But we had previously just studied Psalm 91, and we went in detail for months on that and broke it down. And tonight we are going to begin to look at Psalm 23. Shouldn't take real long, but maybe we'll find a few surprises in there along the way. I think that we will. And you don't want to miss it because if we can get a deeper understanding of something so we can hold on to it, so we can cling to that word, which we should anyway, but understand what we're clinging to, what we're holding on, what we're using to sustain us as a weapon or whatever it is in our time of need. That's amazing. That's what we do here. And that's what his word is for. It's to search it out. So we want to welcome you here this evening as we jump in. So with that being said, if everyone will turn to Psalm 23, we're going to read that real quick and we'll see where we go tonight.
All right. Okay, I've got it right here. So Psalm 23, verse 1. Yahweh is my shepherd.
No. Start at the very beginning where it says a Psalm of David.
Oh, yeah. A Psalm of David. Yahweh is my shepherd. I shall not want. Isn't it interesting? Okay. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters or still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou dost prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness or mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever.
Okay, now I want us to begin to look at that, but we're probably not even going to get to the completion of verse 1 yet, because actually John proved my point. Oftentimes we miss the very first words of this psalm. And what is it? Mizmor la David, a psalm of David.
You set me up.
No, I actually didn't, but you set it up perfectly.
I walked right into that one.
Yeah, that wasn't on purpose. It wasn't planned. But we miss that. And it has meaning in its own that sets the pace of the rest of the psalm if we would truly understand it. So one of the things that I want to say is that this psalm again points in part, or at least the beginning, about the things we say and how we act. And I say over and over again, every Torah portion, every message, it often goes, at least in part, has some of the same root. What we say matters. What we declare, what we do, what we proclaim, what we praise, it matters in this life, and it matters and affects how we, not only does it affect our perspective, because out of the abundance, the heart speak, out of the mouth, anyway,
Out of the abundance of the
heart, the mouth speaks. So we know that, and yet we still have this issue about taming our words. We walk through and we hear it from pastors and preachers and teachers all of the time, and yet we continue to spew out words of death from our mouth. Now, I don't want to sit and rest there yet, because I want to break this thing down a little bit, and I want us to understand that this psalm right here, we realize, many say that David wrote it. So as a young shepherd tending his flock on the hills, what did David learn? When he was tending his flock on the hills of Israel, David fellowshiped with Yah. He worshiped him. He was intimate with him. David is known as a man after Yah's heart. So he came to know Yah's nature, and he knew he was a loving God. He knew that he was good and kind and patient, but he was also strong, and he was one that would take care of him just as he took care of the flocks, and he would deliver him. There was power and strength in him as well. It's not just the kindness of his nature. So David learned through action and through experience and through facing trials that Yah was someone he could trust, that Yah would deliver him, that he would be in his help in times of trouble. And so here we have the very beginning, Mizmor la David. Now, some say that means it was of David, it wasn't, or for David, it wasn't from him. We're not going to argue that point today. We're not going there, but I want us to understand that it's probably one of the most famous psalms that the world even the world knows parts of this psalm. Of course, Christian, Hebrew, Jew, this psalm right here is one that is proclaimed in times of plenty and in times of sadness. It's right here. So it's literally a testament to the faith of the Hebrew people. It should be a testament to us that Yah is always with us, and he is always protecting us, and he's guiding us down the path if we allow him, if we don't put ourselves in the driver's seat. So here we have David. He's singing of Yah's protection. He refers to him as a shepherd. He describes how he trusts in him and he doesn't falter, and that he even walks through hard places, but Yah is still there. And so let's look at the background of this. Let's look at some contextually what's supposed to be happening in David's life that makes his life an example to us. Okay. David's life was not trouble-free. I hope you understand that. He seemed to have battle after battle with the giants, but with the giants, with those that wanted to kill him, with brothers that gave him a hard time. We could go down the list, and with sons that wanted to overthrow him. His life was not just this easy path. Yes, he was blessed, but there were times of hardship, many times of hardship. But through it all, we see David in his writing, in his poetry, in his psalms. He always said, I'm going through this and this, but you are the one I praise. Do we follow that same example? Probably not as often as we should. Now, Rashi actually teaches that David composed this psalm while he was on the run from King Saul. What was King Saul trying to do? Murder him? Yeah. So he was hiding in the dry Judean forest of Heret, and he was on the brink of death, it is said, without food or drink. And then all of a sudden, Yah's miraculous hand comes into play, and he nourished him. And it said he nourished him with a taste of the world to come, is what tradition says. So what does David do? David begins to praise him. He begins to sing out his song, and he begins to describe the magnitude of his trust in Yahweh. According to the interpretation of the Tarban Radak, David alludes to how Yah provided for the Hebrew people through every need of that 40-year sojourn in the desert. Well, we know that's true. He did provide. He did take care of them. And so what does that say to us? It should say to us as well that he will take care of us. Yes, through all the trials and the tribulations, when we're in the desert, when we're on the mountaintop, as long as we look to him as our supply, because he uplifted David, he strengthened him as with his trust, as he trusted in him. But here's the thing. David was on the run from a king who wanted to murder him. Yet, was that the circumstance? Was that the word that was given to him? Did it line up with what was given to him in his younger years? No, because remember, he was promised he would be king. He would be king. And now he's on the run. So if he was like many of us, he would turn around and say, I must have missed it, or Samuel missed it, and or it's just never going to happen because of all the circumstances around me. But those circumstances around him would cause him to be the good king, the great king he needed to be for his people. He had to walk through those circumstances, those near death experiences, so to speak, not literal death, but when you're in a war and when somebody's trying to murder you and all of those things, you're facing death all the time. You're facing trouble. You're facing circumstances. But if he would have acted like us and said, well, I was given this promise when I was young and now it's not happening, so I quit. I just give up. That's what we do, folks. That's exactly what we do. It's been too many years that I've been standing on this word from God. I must have missed it, or they missed it, and I'm just giving up. That's exactly what we do, folks. And it's wrong. And David shows us what we should do and how we should trust right here in this Psalm, Mizmor la David. So I want us to, before we even get to the rest of verse 1, I want us to look at this phrasing because it shows us something important. Now, we know it's a famous psalm. We know that it says a lot. But I think when we look at the paleo, it's going to break it down even more, because we know that the psalm doesn't start with the Lord is my shepherd. No, it starts with Mizmor la David, a psalm of David. If you read it in the paleo, though, it might bring a lot more depth to just those two words, because you can see Mizmor in the first word and David in the second. But when you look at it, you're going to see the structures of these words have repetition in their letters. Wonder what that means. Okay. So let's look at it for a minute. Let's break it down. Just the first two words, Mizmor. Okay. So what does that begin with? That begins with a mem. And when you look at a mem, it's like water or fluid or firmament. It can mean womb and chaos, water, etc. But it can also mean, because of its number, trials and tribulation and even probation. It's actually a picture of waters that can bring destruction, like a tsunami, or waters that refresh, like a spring in the desert. It can refer to living water. Okay, so you have that contronym, the destructive waters and the living water, the waters of life. Okay, that's the first letter, and it's repeated twice in this word, Mizmor. Okay, Zion is our next letter, okay? And it means a weapon or being cut off, or a hatchet. It can also mean, with its number 7, spiritual completeness or perfection. So right now we have water and chaos and womb and trials and tribulation. And then we have something as a weapon or something being cut off. And then we have those waters again, trials and tribulation or waters of life and the womb. We have these 3 are the first letters. But then we have the next letter, which is a vav. Now, we've talked many times that vav is a connecting letter. It means a connection, a nail, a hook, a goad. If you think of the tent, the tent was secured with the vavs. And when one vav is removed, then it puts more pressure on the other vavs, which could eventually lead to the collapse of the tent, the tabernacle. You can look at that. I'm not saying the letter means that, but its purpose is to bring 2 things together, that hook, that goad. And then it's number 6. And then the final letter is Aresh, which means the leader or prince or master. Okay, so here we have a mem, a Zion, a mem, a vav, and a resh. If you've never looked at the letters, then you're going to miss out that searching for something deeper. Okay, I want you to leave that for a minute while we go to the next word, David or David. Okay, and that word, when it's introduced, it's la David. Okay, so really that lamed is hooked to the beginning of the word, which means to teach, again, to goad. It also can mean dedication. And then you have David. You have that dalet and a vav and a dalet. Now, we've always learned that a dalet is a door. It's a path or a pathway that leads to eternal life. Okay. And then we have the connection letter again. A vav is in this word as well. Something is connecting something else. And here again, we have the door or the path that leads to eternal life, that doorway. It can also, with its the number 4, be creative works or the earth or a tent opening. Now, I want us to sit on that. So we have with the paleo of those words, because we're going to look at it from 2 different perspectives. Now, if you put those together, one of the things it could say is that chaos is cut off from chaos. It secures the person. You can look at it that way, but what would that have to do with praise, right? Chaos from chaos. You can also look at it as when you're looking at the waters, that the waters of life, the living water, cuts off the chaos through Yeshua, through as he who is the leader or the prince. Okay, so that you can also look at that first word meaning that, and then either way, we have something being cut off. Chaos is being cut off from chaos, or water, or chaos is being cut off. Living water cuts off the chaos. However it is, how does that attach to praise? Well, maybe we should ask, what is a song of praise? What is that? Now, we've got to remember that Hebrew is a language not only of action, but it's a language of remembering. So I want us to turn to Exodus 15:2. And it is good to see you there from the Philippines. I'm so glad that you've joined us this evening. Well, John is turning there to Exodus 15:2. It's exciting to have you there. We actually have some friends in the Philippines, and 3 or 4 friends actually. And so, but it's a country, so it's not like you would know each other. So, but it's good to have you. All right. And it's good to have Nancy too. I love having Nancy around. Okay. And everybody else who we don't know who's here. So do you have Exodus 15:2?
I do. It reads, Yahweh is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation, or my Yeshua. This is my God, and I will praise him. Oh, my father's God, and I will extol him.
Okay. So if we look at it, Moses' song of praise to Yah, what just happened? He was praising him for the victory over the Egyptian army at the Sea of Reeds, or the Red Sea. But how did that victory happen? Was it by their hand? No. Because Egypt is representative of chaos. Do we live in a world of chaos right now? Yeah. It seems to be chaos sort of all around us. Would you agree or disagree with that, John?
I was just thinking about the Craig report when you said that. So.
Okay, well, let's save that for the Craig report. Let's save that. So we live in this world of chaos. Well, what's going to subdue the chaos? There's only one thing, right?
That is exactly right.
It's the living word. It's the water. It's the living water that flows from the throne that's supposed to flow through us. It's Yeshua himself, who is the living water, right? And so we look at this chaos of Egypt is descending upon the children of Israel, but it was destroyed when the waters closed over the attackers. The waters covered the chaos. The waters covered the enemy. So chaos was literally cut off by this mass of water, which could be considered chaos, or you could say the living water. Remember, there you can look at it which way you want to look at it. And what did it do? It secured, it attached the people of Israel to Yah. It secured them, okay? Which is good. That's what we want. As a result, what did Moshe do? Moses sang the first mizmor. He sang the praise. So every time a mizmor is sung, we are supposed to be reminded of that victory that secured the nation of Israel, that took them out of Egypt, that showed Yah's hand was going to be there, that they didn't need to worry, that he would do the job to destroy their enemies, to remove their enemies. And then you go back to that promise from him. And he says, because we are in covenant with him, not only are his enemies to be our enemies. That's why we aren't supposed to love things and do things that are against the word, against the Torah. But our enemies are his. Okay, that's what we see in this first word. I think it's such a beautiful picture. Whether it's the chaos, whether it is chaos being cut off or cutting off chaos and it secures the person, or it's the living water cutting off the chaos uh, and connecting us to the head, to Yeshua himself. But so let's look at it with David. Let's look at David right now. So David, or David in the Paleo, is something like the authority of the pathway secures the pathway, because we have that double letter again. Okay, that's one way to look at it, right? So when we bring it together, we know we can have a doorway too, a doorway, pathway, but it's securing, or it's attaching us to the door. So where's that going to bring us? Well, we could read it as control of the tongue secures the pathway. Oh, isn't that what I just said a little bit ago? Something about what comes out of our mouth. Now, I know for many, especially that call themselves Hebrew roots or Messianic, praise has become something they don't want to do. Well, and actually in tradition, they probably didn't do it much in the first place before they came to the Hebrew roots or the Messianic faith. And unfortunately, if David, who was a praiser, was a man after Yah's own heart, and the words of life that spoke, the words of Yah that sung creation into existence, prove that song is so important, because it is actually words being proclaimed from our mouth. It moves on our hearts, it moves on our emotion, and we know that Yah is enthroned in our praises. So there's something that's really amazing about the word that is sung forth, not just spoken, but sung. Okay? So here we have this psalm, Mismor la David, this psalm of David. David is about to control or authority over the doors, both doors, and security. Maybe David is not only a great king, but he's also great with the words he writes down to remind us of what's important. Because I remember David as a man after our own heart. Some may say it's his kingship, but do we really remember him for his kingship, or do we remember him because of the words that he's spoken, the psalms that he said, the things he's done? Yes, what a mighty king he was, and what a mighty example of life as he defeated giant after giant. But David's songs, they of praise, they lead us to Yah, and he opens the door for our feelings and our struggles and our joys and our defeats, so that we can enter the path of Yah. Maybe yes, David is a great king, but his words are what we cling to and what resonate within us and in our hearts and in our lives. So that's why people know this psalm. Mizmor la David is a memorial. It's an emotion, and it's what we need to hear. It is said every Shabbat that you pray this psalm before every meal. Mizmor la David takes us back to the one and reminds us that Yahweh is the one who saves, and he will take care of every one of our needs, with no matter what's happening around us. Mizmor la David. So when we just begin this psalm, we need to remember how important the path, our words will lead us down a path. Remember, I said it might be recited as control of the tongue secures the pathway. What pathway do we want to lead on? Is it the pathway of death, because we're constantly speaking death? Or what we say, well, I've heard people say, well, that's what's really happening. Okay, who cares about that? What does the word say? That's more real. What does Yah say? Whose report do we believe? We say that, but do we live it out? Hey, I'm not just teaching to you guys. I'm preaching to myself, because it's something we need to be reminded of daily, because life and death are in the power of the tongue. Maybe our words should be the song that he sings. Hey, I trust in you. Those things, because they secure us down his pathway. They cause the chaos that is around us to subside, because the living water is more powerful. So I wanted to give you that short intro to what we're going to talk about. Wow, this seems like a short amount of time. And I want you to say something for just a quick second if you want, John, and then I want to say one more thing before
Okay,
we
yeah.
out.
So just real quickly, I was just thinking about all these things you were talking about regarding the Psalm of David. By the way, it's very important. My translation throws it outside the verse. So you made a really good point. It is part of verse 1. Okay. Second thing I wanted to say is David's out there as a shepherd, watching over the flocks. How do you get, Yeshua said one thing is very interesting. He said this, um, when he puts forth all his own, talking about the good shepherd, he goes before them and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. How did the sheep know his voice? Well, the shepherd isn't just going to sit there and talk all the time. He can sing. And so I thought that was interesting. I was just thinking, David was a psalmist. He sang.
And
And
what does the song do? A song tends to calm the spirit, whether an animal or human.
mm-hmm. Yeah. So that now the sheep are getting to know his voice because he's singing over them. Well, let me tie this over to Zephaniah 3:17, where it says, Yahweh thy Elohim in the midst of thee is mighty. He will save. He will rejoice over thee with joy. He will rest in his love. He will joy over thee with singing. How do we know his name? How do we know his voice? How do we know Yeshua's voice?
All right.
The shepherd, the good shepherd, is singing over us.
That's right. Well, I know it's quick tonight. We're trying to learn this new schedule and figure it out. We might have to do some adjustment here and there. But I wanted to give a word as we brought the part 1 of this teaching to a close, is that this is the end of the year, and I know people are giving here and there, but if you are part of Life of Worship or consider yourself part or get teaching from us, and you maybe you, because of circumstances, haven't been able to bring your tithes and offerings, or you just haven't given to the ministry before, or whatever it is, we are in desperate need right now. We are in desperate need right now to continue to do what we do in finances. We've had some stealing come our way, not from within, but from forces without, and we need your help. So I want to encourage you to give your best gift if you possibly could. You can go to our website and you can donate there, or you can write a check to Life of Worship and send it our way. Our address is on there. And we don't do this very often, but we are in a place where we need your help. So spread the word. And if this means something to you, if you get something from this, if you get spiritual food from this, and you want us to continue with the prison ministry and all of that, hey, we've got to run because we're out of time. But hey, give your very best. We want to thank you and bless you. Till next time, shalom.
Shalom.